On this episode, I'll show you how to either remove a front or a rear screen on the Jaguar XJ6 and replace the seal. Welcome back to Living with a Classic, and if you're new to my channel, I hope you stick around and consider subscribing. I put new videos every week on some Jaguar and classic car related content, and today we're continuing working on my 1975 daily driver Jaguar XJ6. Has a leaky rear screen. In severe rain, especially for driving in heavy rain, I get some drips down on the back seat, so that's not a good thing at all. Now when we're going into fall and winter, you want this to be a weatherproof car. So the old seal looks really dry and cracked, like you'll see in a little bit. So I will show you how to remove the screen safely, clean everything out, put in a new seal, get everything back together, and get it weather tight. It's quite an extensive job, but it's definitely something you can do at home. It's good if you have an extra set of hands for some of the things. Getting everything out by yourself is not really an issue, but when you want to put everything back in, it's good if you have an extra set of hands. So let's head over to the car and have a look at the old seal, and you can see how bad it is. Here's the rear screen. Now let's have a quick look at that old seal, and you'll pretty quickly understand why I'm replacing it. Because if you look maybe just here at first, you're like, oh, it's a little dry, it's not that bad, but look at all the cracking in here. If you get down here, it's basically just falling apart. See the decorative stainless steel here, it's not even held in place properly. It's cracking. Up here, it's pulling apart from the bodywork, so you can get water in here. And actually, I did notice once or twice when it's raining really hard and I'm driving, especially at high speed, rain just come in, I think from here, at least because I do get some drops down there on the rear seat. So it is definitely leaking. It's time to replace it. So step one, of course, is to remove this stainless surround. You're going to be really careful doing that because it's really hard to get a hold of. Another one in decent condition, and also they're quite awkward to ship if you want to ship them somewhere, so I'm going to be really careful getting those out. And then since it's the rear screen, I also have some electrics here for the rear heating, which actually works on this car, so we're going to be careful disconnecting that as well. Then when we have all that out, we can start setting up some secure tape over here to just hold it in place, make sure it doesn't fall off. And then we're going to start getting the old seal out. But I'll set up the camera, we'll start getting off the stainless. On the European XJ6, XJ12, Series 1, Series 2, and the coupes, you have these two clips here that hold the two stainless halves in place. One over here and one here, which I've already sort of just loosened a bit with my finger. I mean, if your seal here is pretty much brand new and soft, you can easily sort of get these off with your fingernail or careful screwdriver with a rag. However, this is rock solid, so I'm going to use a different method. I will be using a sharp knife, like a Stanley knife, and just cut along the inside here. I'm not going to cut by the glass, but cut about halfway between the glass and the stainless here, just to get rid of this old seal here. Then we can pull that off and get the stainless off really easily without damaging anything. So I'm just going to carefully start cutting into the old rubber here. As you can see, I'm doing about halfway through the seal, so I'm not going to damage anything. Alright, so I'm going to do it in pieces, just pick it off like this. As you can see, you hear that when it hit the paint, you can hear how rock solid this old stuff is. So I'm going to continue just cutting off all the way along, and then let's see if we can lift off the trim really easily. As you can see, it's pretty time-consuming work, but it's a lot better than damaging your trim. Done a lot of it so far on here. Some of it comes off in bigger chunks up here, where I think hasn't got as much sun damage, and the stuff down here just comes up in small, really rock-solid chunks. But the funny thing is that it's not as hard on the inside as it is on the outside, so it's definitely, sun or UV damage. So, yeah, I've got a bit more left, but starting to loosen up here as well. So I'm going to concentrate on not cutting myself and not cutting the paint or the glass. And I'll continue, and I'll see you want to have one side off. I think it's completely loose now. See, and there I can pull it off. It came off without bending it or anything. So I'm going to lay this down to the side. However, this is a really good time to polish up your trim if you can, and also it's a great time to protect it with wax, especially you can get into places you can't get before, and it's just a lot easier than when it's back in the seal. So if you want to clean yours up, I'm going to clean this up a bit. Now's a great time to do it, but at least put this somewhere safe. I got both pieces of stainless off now. As you might know, these type of window seals have a piece of rubber inside that basically locks everything in place, so that needs to go out first. I found that here on this particular car is where the two edges are. So I'm grabbing a very blunt screwdriver. And with everything, you gotta be really careful so you don't do anything with force so you scratch anything or head off the paint. So I'm gonna try just removing this, and it's going pretty good. If you have a pretty new and soft piece of rubber here, this should loosen off most of the tension and should be pretty easy to get out. However, this thing is so hard and old that when I pull this out, none of the old rubber is going back together, so I'm not sure how much is helped, but at least now that's out of the way. With all that out of the way, now you can really see how cracked everything is and how dry and hard and worn it is. Definitely due for a change. So I am going to cut everything out. I don't want to put any stress on the old windscreen or anything by trying to push it out. Some people just, go inside the car, put their feet on it, try and push it out. But I'm not going to do it. I don't want to crack anything. So I'm going to carefully try and cut it out. But first, of course, I need to disconnect the two cables. I think there's one there, and there's probably one on the other side as well. With the electrical connections removed on both sides, I just started to do a few tests here. I want to see how far down the glass goes, because I don't want to cut into the glass, and I don't want to cut into the metal. So right about here, so pretty much the lower lip in here is how far the glass goes. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut along here, for a bit, and then try and pull this off. The windscreen is still going to stay in place because it seems to be bonded as well, or not bonded, but there's sealant on it, so it's going to stick in place. So I'm going to start cutting all this away. Then when most of this is gone, we'll set up some tape here to hold it in place, and then we'll see if we can start pushing it out. So I'm going to try cutting in here. That seems to be the level at where the glass ends. And then just sort of pull it off in pieces. It's so dry it just falls apart in your hands. Yeah, it's going to be quite fiddly, so I'll continue with that, and then when I come back, the glass should pretty much be ready to go out. So a while later with the knife, and I've cut everything off. So now technically the screen is only held in place with, I think, a little bit of sealant on the inside, but it's really rock hard and dry, so I think I should be able to push it out pretty easily. But the thing I want to do now, before you start pushing out, I want to secure that it's not going to fall out. So I have some tape here, and I'm just going to get rid of some of the dust here from picking off all this old rubber. And I'm using masking tape because it's strong enough for this. But the good thing is it's easy to get off. So you want to have a tape that you have some flexibility to. So I'm putting it on like this. But you can see I'm leaving a little bit up in the air just so I'll be able to push it out a little bit more. So I'll put tape over there, down here as well. Then I'm going to put on some gloves and let's see if we can carefully push this out. And one thing you got to remember, before you start taking it out, prepare where you're going to put the glass. I've already laid down some cloth on a table, a little bit off camera, where I can easily lay this thing down and it's going to be safe. Tape is in place. Let's see if I can get this thing out. So I have some good gloves on, which have good grip, but will save my hands in case this thing shatters. You don't want to cut yourself. So all I'm doing is putting a hand on the outside, a hand on the inside, and I'm just pushing gently. Just seeing that, okay, it's starting to move here. You don't want to put too much pressure anywhere because the last thing you want to do is crack this thing. Okay, it's moving up here, so I'm going to see if it moves on the other side as well. There was some adhesive there and that just let loose. It's loose all the way down here as well. That's really excellent. Let's see if I can give it a little bit of a shove down here because it seems to be, that's sort of where it's still stuck. Alright, now it's let loose everywhere, I think. I'm going to double check on the other side. It's still nice in place, at least it's not falling off. Okay, now it seems like it's loose everywhere, so I'm going to start grabbing it here on the bottom and just pulling or ripping off the tape. And there it comes off. Now carry this off and put it somewhere safe. And here's the rear screen out. As you can see, I'll have quite a lot to clean up. This is some of the old sealant. It's on the outside. And it's coming off here with my fingers, but I think in a while I'm going to flip this thing over, put some more towels down, and then I can use some soft plastic spatula just to scrape this off and clean everything off so it's really nice and clean when it goes back in. And here on the car we do have some stuff left to do. So here's what's left of the seal. Since we cut off a lot of it, you have the inside part left, which as you can see, we can start just pulling that off with the fingers. It's going to come off pretty nicely up here. However, down here, just to not damage this piece of trim here, I'm going to quickly remove the top of the rear seat belts and probably remove this and get the trim out, just so we have some more space down here. Then I'm just going to simply pull, yeah, like that, pull all of this off. Then we'll have a look at what the metal looks like and see if it has to be treated. If this is, so far this actually just looks like primer. That looks just like dirt. So we're going to have a look, see if there's any rust or anything. Hopefully there isn't anything. Or if it is, it's just some surface rust that we can treat. And then get all this ready for a new seal. But I'm going to start removing some things here now. And just pulling the seal off. I'm loosening the last holder here for the seat belts. And I just removed the seat cushion in the back and sort of wiggled the rear seat a bit. So this panel should be loose now. Okay, now that can slide out of the way. And now this panel back here as well. If you're just taking the screen out, it's not necessary to remove everything here, but since my screen has been leaking, and I'm not sure how long, my guess is that some water is probably collected up here. And I'm right, a little bit of water has been collecting here before. It's all dry now, but there's a little bit of surface rust here. Nothing has rusted through or anything, thankfully. But this is an excellent time just to treat this with a rust converter, and then I'm just gonna brush paint it in a very similar green paint I have. No one's ever really gonna see this, but I just don't want this to rust anymore. I'll just continue pulling off the rest of the seal here. And then, yeah, I do have a lot of cleaning to do. Lots of old sealant to get off everywhere. But so far, everything looks really, really good. Haven't found any rust up here. Let's see if we can find anything down here. But I'll take this off, clean everything up. Then if we find any surface rust here, we'll have to treat that as well. Otherwise, this is what we're going to be treating in a little bit. I removed all the seal now, and I do have a little bit of sealant left. However, I haven't found any surface rust at all on the edge here, which is great. There's some sealant left I need to remove, but the red that you're seeing here and certain other places is just the red primer that's under everything. So at some point when this car was restored, this was the primer used, because I found it basically everywhere. It's under the floors, it's everywhere, it's in the sills. So that was used. I don't know what it is, if it's an epoxy primer or what it is, but it's definitely stuck on there really, really well. However, there is this little bit of surface rust here. None of it is definitely serious, but it's a good time to treat it. So I'm just using some rust converter. I've used this before on the channel. I really like type of rust converter like this that you don't need to wash up afterwards. You just put this on, you wait at least 4 hours for it to completely cure. It turns black when it's treated all the rust. It's basically turn the rust bacteria back into friendly, nice metal that's not going to harm your car. And then this you need to paint over within 48 hours. Alright, so I'm just going to continue painting all of this. Let this sit and cure, and then we're not painting, I'm going to treat it with all of this. Let this sit and cure, and then when this is all cured, we're going to paint all this area with a good rust preventative paint that is really, really close match actually to the color of the car, but doesn't really matter. No one's ever going to see this. It's the next day, and as you can see, I've painted all of this as well. So I let that rust converter completely cure. It took about 4 or 5 hours. Then I painted this last night, and it's not completely dry, but it's dry to the touch at least. And I'm not really going to be inside the car now on the screen, so this can dry a little bit longer before all the rear panel and stuff goes back on. I've also spent quite a lot of time just cleaning everything out here, making sure that there's none of the old sealant left, and just cleaning everything out. Last thing I wiped everything down with was acetone, just to make sure it's completely clean. I found no rust, which is amazing. Any of the red stuff that you see here is just primer. At some point during a restoration of this car, I mean it's 45 years old, but at some point I think it had a major restoration and a lot of body panels and things were replaced. At least the sills and stuff, because I found this red primer in there, and it seems to be under the paint everywhere. However, it's had a repaint, not really sure how long ago, but maybe 5 or so years ago or 10 years ago. But that was done with the screens in place, at least the rear screen in place. So some of the paint had gone over onto the rubber here. So in some places I had to cut a little bit with a razor blade just to try and save some of the paint, still get a clean area. But I think with the new seal in place and a little bit of sealant around here, I can cover this up so you won't be able to see that at least. But hopefully you don't have that issue when you replace your screen. I've also spent quite a bit of time, so you can see everything on the floor. I need to clean it up, getting everything off the old screen as well. Took quite a bit of time getting all of the sealant off here as well, but all that is nice and clean now. And now we're ready for the next step. On these cars, the seals are put into the frame first, or they go onto the bodywork first. Then the windscreen is tucked in at the bottom all the way. Make sure it bottoms out, and then you feed it up along the sides with some tools. So what I want to do is do a dry fit of just a rubber to make sure it fits around really nicely. Then I will take it off and I'll put a bead of sealant around when we fit everything. So I like to locate where the rubber has been joined together right here, and I'm going to put that in the middle up top so it looks sort of nice. And this side is where the glass goes, and this side up here goes against the bodywork. So I've located that is pretty much the middle up there, and I'm just gonna, it's always kind of difficult to start it. I'll just feed it all the way around, and we'll make sure that it fits nicely. Okay, it's starting to get there. It's always the corners that are most difficult, where you need to make sure it goes all the way into the corner. Some of you may be wondering why I'm not using any kind of lubrication. It's just because I don't want to ruin the clean surface I have here, so that the sealant doesn't adhere to anything. So I guess it's a little bit more difficult, but as long as you're patient and it's not too cold in your workshop, and you've made sure that there are no sharp edges anywhere, you can do this and you won't damage the gasket. So just a little bit left to go here, and pretty soon it should be in place. Okay, so you see this fits pretty nicely. Still have that pretty much dead in the middle. It's all the way in place. corners are pretty good. It's pretty much as close as you can get the corners. They do get pushed up by the glass. Here as well. And here you can see where I had to cut a little bit in the paint into the primer. So when everything's in place, I'm going to do a little bit of a bead of sealant here to cover that up. But that is because the car was painted with the seals in place. And there's a little bit of that issue over here as well, but it's not gonna be noticeable with some sealant over there, a little bead. No one's ever gonna notice. Right, so that actually seems to fit really well. Now that we know that it fits really nicely, the next step is to lay some sealant down. So you want sealant between here and the bodywork, and then when the glass is all in, before we put in the locking strip, we're going to put some sealant between here and the glass. Since this thing was such a pain to fit, I'm not going to remove it when I put sealant in here. I'm just going to bend up the edge a little bit. When I put in, I'm using windscreen sealant, which takes quite a long time to set. It's about 1 to 3 days before it's fully cured. That means that you at least have some time to work with it. So I'm just going to lay a bead all the way around here. Alright, I have a lot of sealant all the way around now. So as a lubrication, I'm going to use, or lubricant, I'm going to use a window cleaner because it evaporates and doesn't leave anything behind. So I'm just spraying a little bit into the groove here in the bottom. And now it's time to put the glass in the car. That's good if you have an assistant. So I have my wife here helping out. We're going to hold it up against like so. And we're going to see if we can get it into the groove somewhere. Okay, I just pulled it over a bit now and it could start going into the seal here. The tricky part is getting the corners first. Now we have those in. We're actually just going to let it settle for a little bit. And then in a few minutes we're just going to try and push it down to make sure it's seated all the way. We can get the top in, but now that both corners are in, you can kind of let go of it. It's not really going to go anywhere. You just let gravity do its work. Alright, so now it's just a matter of working in a little bit one time at each side. So don't just try and finish one side. Go up a little bit. So I'm using some window cleaner again. Works as a great lubricant. And just trying to get everything into place. A little bit here on the sides. Now we're going to try and push it down again. It feels like it's all the way down. This little plastic tool I'm using is a set of 3 of them that you can buy in any bicycle store for changing out tires on a bicycle. But this side here, if you get the ones in plastic, can work pretty well for these sort of jobs because you get pretty good angle. They're pretty strong. And they're meant to not hurt rubber. So it's in place, and that's a big sigh of relief. Went in pretty nicely. It was stuck for a little bit over here, but overall that was a pretty good experience. So now the next thing is I want to put some sealant between the rubber and the glass on this side. So since I maybe got some debris or window cleaner down there, I'm just going to try to open this up with my hands and just blow it out. Get some fresh air. With all that blown out, the next step is to put some sealant, like I said, between glass and the rubber. So just gonna get this thing in there. And yeah, there's nothing to it. Just fill it with some of the same window sealant around here. Don't worry if you get any of this on your paint, which you will. White spirit takes it off before it hardens, and it doesn't it's not harmful to the sealant, so it's still going to seal well. And it's not harmful to your paint as well. But I guess now you can see why I'm doing this. Before I'm spending a couple of days polishing and waxing my car, it's a good idea to do any of this job before you spend any time on your paint. So I'm going to continue just cleaning up around any spaces now where I spilled some of this, because it does come out pretty much everywhere. And then we're on to the next step. Now it's time to put basically the locking strip in, which spreads out the gasket, makes sure everything is tight, and locks everything in place. There is a special roller tool for putting this in. I don't have one, and I couldn't really source one locally, or ones I could find were several weeks for them to get here. But I've done it before with just the same kind of plastic tool. It's definitely doable. It will take a while, but basically you're just trying to mimic what that tool is doing. Spreading it out and then pushing it in with your thumb. And if you were to miss a little bit, like felt right there that side didn't go in, I can just take the tool and gently push it in. And you see, it's locking into place nicely. So I'm going to do the whole screen now. Once you've gotten it in a good way, so it's sort of stuck in there, you can, if you're careful, use a wrench. I'm using a 9mm. It's a sort of, it's hard to do one-handed, but you see you can push it in. And as long as you're very careful, you can pretty easily get it in this way. Locking seal is in all the way around. Now it's time to get rid of any of the excess sealant that's come out around here, because you know that you have a good coverage of sealant if you see it come out everywhere, and it has here. So I have like a rubber sort of spatula thing, and got this at a hardware store, and it has a good right angle here. So all I'm gonna do is just, you know, pull along here, and, you know, take off any excess that I can. Yeah, just clean all of this up. When I've gotten as much of the excess off as I can, we'll come back with some white spirit and clean off everything that has some extra sealant on it. This is as far as I'm going to clean it right now. What's left is all the fingerprints on the inside and a few other things, but I can get all that off later. I did notice that the sealant is starting to cure now, starting to get really sticky and not being able to be as easily manipulated as before. So I'm going to let this thing cure now. When it's cured, I will of course be fitting back the stainless trim on the side, but I like to wait until it's cured, because those can be kind of a hassle to fit, and I don't want to disturb any of the sealant now. Also, because I had the issue of paint being on top of here before, when it's all cured, I'm going to draw a line just with masking tape all the way around until here, and put a pretty big bead of window sealant around just to cover that up, and I think it will look really nice. But now at least it's all in place, and technically it should already be watertight now, but I'm going to let it cure here in the workshop with the heat on for a few days just to let it be fully cured. And that's it for this episode. Now the rear window is in place, and it should be weatherproof, and there should be no leaks. Like I mentioned, there are some more things to do, like I need to fit the trim around the edges and do some other things. So let me know in the comments down below if that's something you want to see in the next video, or if I should just do it off camera and I'll show you what it looks like in another video when it's all back together. But please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Anyways, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. And until next time, I'm Adam, and this was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.